The fear of intimacy you didn't know you had. You say you want deep love. You want someone who sees you. Someone who hears you. Someone who stays. But what happens when that person actually shows up? Have you ever been in a moment where someone looked at you with pure affection, and instead of feeling safe, you felt uncomfortable? Not because they did anything wrong, but because you didn't know where to put that kind of tenderness. Maybe you smiled back. Maybe you even said all the right things. But inside, something recoiled. A quiet tension filled the room. You might have asked yourself, why am I pulling away from something I've always wanted? And you wouldn't be alone in asking that. We often talk about the pain of being rejected. But we rarely talk about the panic that can arise when love gets too close. Not chaotic love. Not unavailable love. But stable, consistent, open-hearted love. The kind we say we're waiting for. And yet, when it finally enters the room, something inside us hesitates. Or shuts down. Or picks a fight. Or decides it must be too good to be true. So let me ask you gently, not for judgment, but for reflection. Have you ever felt uneasy when someone expressed how much they loved you? Have you ever minimized your feelings instead of sharing them, just to keep things light? Have you told yourself someone was too nice and lost interest soon after? Have you ever pulled away first, just to avoid the risk of being left? If any of these landed, even faintly, it doesn't mean you're broken. It might just mean there's a part of you that's still scared. Not of love itself, but of what love might reveal about you. I remember a time in my own life when this truth came crashing in. I had spent years in relationships that were complicated, intense, full of longing. And part of me thought, that's just what love is. Wanting someone who doesn't fully want you. Proving yourself. Working hard for closeness. Always afraid that if you show too much, they'll leave. So when I finally met someone who was emotionally available, who really saw me and wanted to be there, my mind didn't know what to do with it. It felt too calm. Too safe. Too exposed. There were no games. No mystery. No anxiety. Just presence. And instead of feeling peaceful, I felt like I was waiting for the catch. There had to be one. Because if someone truly loved me, eventually, they would see the parts one couldn't hide forever. And when they did, I thought, that's when they'll leave. So I kept some distance. Not in an obvious way, but in all the small ways we avoid being truly seen. I didn't fully let her into my fears. I held back the parts of me I thought were too messy, too complicated, too much. But she stayed. Not with pressure. Just with patience. And slowly, something inside me softened. Not all at once. Not in a moment of grand revelation. But in tiny, ordinary exchanges, where I was honest, vulnerable, maybe even scared, and still, she met me there. Still, she stayed. Over time, I learned something that changed me. It wasn't love I had feared. It was the experience of being fully received in love. And that is something we're not taught how to do, especially if, growing up, love was conditional. Or confusing. Or absent. Or overwhelming. Sometimes the fear of intimacy doesn't come from a single event. It comes from years of subtle shaping. Maybe love was given, but only when you behaved a certain way. Maybe you were praised for being the calm one, the strong one, the one who didn't need too much. Maybe your feelings were rarely asked about, so you learned to tuck them away. You didn't stop wanting closeness, you just learned to survive without it. It's strange how we remember childhood. Not in words or scenes, but in atmosphere. In the way our body responds when someone reaches out. In how long it takes us to believe that we're really safe. You may not remember a parent turning away. But you might remember the feeling of being too much. You might remember dimming your joy or shrinking your sadness so the people around you wouldn't feel overwhelmed. That's where it begins, the training. Not through cruelty. Sometimes through love that was just unavailable in the way you needed. So you adjusted. You became self-contained. You learned that needing closeness was risky. Later, when you meet someone who offers that closeness, your mind may say yes. But your body, the part that remembers, quietly says wait. Because being loved is vulnerable. It means being seen. It means letting someone witness the parts of you that you were taught to hide, the mess, the fear, the need. And if, early on, those parts were rejected, ignored, or made to feel like burdens, it makes perfect sense that your first instinct would be to hide them again, even from the people you love. Sometimes we don't fear love. We fear being fully known. Because somewhere deep inside, we still wonder if we're lovable once the mask comes off. So we push away good people. We chase unavailable ones. We create drama or distractions. Or we intellectualize everything, trying to explain ourselves instead of simply expressing. All of this, not because we don't want intimacy, but because we're terrified of what it might expose. That's the fear we carry, not of closeness itself, but of what closeness might reveal. Not everyone had the kind of childhood where love and safety existed in the same room. For some of us, love was fused with unpredictability. Or with silence. Or with sacrifice. So now, when love appears calm and present, it can feel unfamiliar. Even suspicious. We ask, what do they really want from me? Or how long will this last? Or what if I let them in and they see something that makes them turn away? And sometimes, without even knowing we're doing it, we make that happen. We test. We retreat. We numb. Not to sabotage the connection, but to stay in control of the ending. It feels safer to walk away first than to be left later. It feels easier to chase what won't commit than to surrender to what stays. Because what stays, might one day see all of us. And that, for many of us, is the most frightening possibility of all. It's easy to believe we're ready for love. We say the words. We write them in journals. We pray, we visualize, we wait. But readiness isn't just in the longing. It's in the receiving. And many of us don't realize how much we still resist what we claim to want. It doesn't always look like fear. Sometimes it looks like being endlessly busy. Like falling for someone who lives in another city, or another world. Like convincing ourselves we're too focused on healing right now to make space for a real relationship. Like staying in a situationship that keeps us just close enough to feel something, but not close enough to feel seen. Other times, it looks like perfectionism. We think we need to be fully healed before we let anyone in. We think we must fix every insecurity before we can be lovable. So we keep working on ourselves, not to grow, but to delay. And while we wait for ourselves to become someone better, love waits too. Uninvited, untrusted, unreceived. There's a strange comfort in emotional distance. When we love someone who won't fully choose us, we don't have to fully show up either. We don't have to face our rawest parts. We don't have to reveal the tenderness, the ache, the need. Because to be loved, really loved, is to let someone stand in front of those parts and not flinch. And that kind of intimacy isn't just about opening your heart. It's about opening the locked doors inside it. The ones you built long ago, when you realized no one was coming through. The ones you painted over and forgot existed. But they're still there. And every time someone knocks with kindness, your instinct might still be to say, "No one's home." The truth is, many of us have trained ourselves to avoid emotional risk. We've become masters at control, at shaping the narrative, managing the connection, deciding who gets access and how much. But love doesn't thrive in controlled spaces. It needs room to breathe, to stumble, to ask questions, to not know all the answers. If we only let people see the polished version of ourselves, we never get to experience the kind of love that's meant for the parts we've hidden. And that's where the loneliness creeps in, even when we're in relationships. Because if you're only ever half showing up, then even when love is offered, it doesn't land. You smile, but you don't feel it. You hear the words, but you don't believe them. And it's not because they're lying. It's because a part of you still doesn't believe you deserve what they're saying.